Selena Hale never imagined that a simple spa visit would shatter her world. But as she stood frozen in the lavish lounge, watching her billionaire husband, Dorian, slip a diamond ring onto another woman's finger, the truth crashed down on her like a tidal wave. Selena Voss lived a life most could only dream of. Married to billionaire investor Dorian Hale, she had everything: an extravagant mansion, designer clothes, and a lifestyle filled with luxury. From the outside, she appeared to be the luckiest woman in the world. Her marriage was admired, her future secure, and her name carried weight in high society. But beneath the glamorous facade, there were cracks she couldn't ignore. The loneliness crept in slowly, like a shadow stretching across her once bright world. She had met Dorian 5 years ago, when he was already a rising name in the business world. His charm was undeniable, and his ambition was even greater. Selena, a former fashion consultant, had been drawn to his confidence, the way he could command attention in any room. When he proposed, it wasn't just love she felt, it was certainty. She believed they would build something lasting, something real. For the first few years, that belief held strong, but as time passed, Dorian's focus shifted. His business, empire expanded rapidly, demanding more of his time. Meetings, international flights, late-night calls, all of it kept him away. He reassured her, saying he was working for their future, that the sacrifices were necessary. Selena tried to be understanding. She immersed herself in charity work, social events, and decorating the nursery for their unborn child. At 6 months pregnant, she should have been glowing with excitement, but instead she felt abandoned. The changes weren't just in his absence. When Dorian was home, he was different. His words felt rehearsed, his touch distant. He no longer asked about her day or took interest in the little details he once cherished. When she brought up the baby, he nodded along, but his enthusiasm was lacking. There were no late-night talks about baby names, no excitement about their future as parents. Selena convinced herself it was just stress. Billionaires carried burdens most people couldn't understand, but her instincts whispered that something was wrong. Little signs nagged at her: his phone always face down, the unexplained trips, the way he avoided eye contact when she asked if he was happy. Then, the spa invitation arrived. A beautifully wrapped package with a handwritten note from Dorian, encouraging her to relax and take care of herself. The Elysium Resort was the most exclusive spa retreat in the country, a place known for discretion and indulgence. It was the kind of place where celebrities and CEOs escaped from the public eye. Selena hesitated. A weekend away from home felt unnecessary, but when she mentioned it to Dorian, his insistence was almost strange. He wanted her to go, to enjoy herself, to take a break. It wasn't just a suggestion, it was a push. Maybe he was right. Maybe she needed a reset. The tension she carried wasn't good for the baby, and a little self-care couldn't hurt. So she packed her bags, choosing silk robes and comfortable dresses over the high-fashion attire she usually wore. She told herself she would let go of the doubts, the worries, and just enjoy a weekend of peace. When she arrived at the spa, it was everything she imagined and more. Towering palm trees lined the entrance, and the scent of lavender filled the air. Every detail exuded tranquility: the soft lighting, the plush furniture, the warm smiles of the staff who greeted her by name. She was led to a private villa, a sprawling sanctuary with its own infinity pool, luxurious bath, and a view that stretched over a quiet, sun-kissed landscape. For the first time in weeks, she allowed herself to exhale. She booked a massage, indulged in a fruit platter, and let the tension in her shoulders melt away. Maybe Dorian had been right. This was exactly what she needed. As she walked through the spa's corridors, her thoughts wandered. She imagined Dorian at work, busy with meetings, unaware that she was finally taking his advice. But just as a sense of calm began to settle, something unexpected happened. A voice, familiar, deep, close. Her breath caught in her throat. She turned toward the sound, her heart hammering as she spotted a man just beyond the decorative partition. Her vision sharpened, and the world around her faded. It was Dorian, not in an office, not in London, not where he was supposed to be, and he wasn't alone. Selena's breath hitched as she stood frozen behind the decorative partition. The world around her blurred, her heartbeat loud in her ears. It couldn't be him. Dorian was supposed to be in London, finalizing a business deal that had consumed most of his time over the past few weeks. And yet, there he was, just a few feet away, lounging in a private seating area of the spa, completely at ease. She clenched her fists, her nails digging into her palms as she forced herself to stay silent. Her stomach twisted, a sharp contrast to the serene luxury of her surroundings. She had prepared herself for loneliness, for his growing distance, but not for this. Not for the sight of him looking so comfortable, so unbothered, while she had spent months questioning everything. Then, she saw her. The woman sitting beside him was effortlessly stunning, with long dark hair that cascaded over her bare shoulders. Her silk robe, slightly parted, revealed smooth, sun-kissed skin. Her posture was relaxed, her hand resting lightly on Dorian's knee. They were close, too close. Their hushed laughter carried through the air like a cruel melody. Selena knew her instantly. Ivy Moreau, a name she had seen too many times in magazines, in society pages, always surrounded by whispers of scandal and mystery. A high-profile model known for her connections to the wealthy and powerful. But why was she here with Dorian? Why were they looking at each other like that? A lump formed in Selena's throat as she watched Dorian lean in, his fingers grazing Ivy's wrist before reaching for a small velvet box. Time slowed as he flipped it open, revealing a sparkling diamond ring, a ring that looked disturbingly familiar. Selena's vision blurred, her body swaying slightly. That ring, it wasn't an exact copy, but it was close enough to the one she wore on her own hand. The size, the shape, the design, it was deliberate. This wasn't just some meaningless affair. It wasn't a passing distraction. It was something far worse. Her chest tightened, a deep ache spreading through her ribs. She wanted to look away, to turn around and pretend she hadn't seen it, but she couldn't. The betrayal was paralyzing. She had spent years devoted to this man, believing in their future, carrying his child, and now she was witnessing him build something new with someone else. Her fingers trembled as she reached for the edge of the partition, steadying herself. She needed to move, to do something, to stop this. But even as the rage burned inside her, she knew she had to think. She couldn't just burst in, screaming, demanding answers. That wasn't how this needed to play out. She stepped back, pressing a hand to her stomach, as if to protect the child who was unknowingly caught in the middle of this deception. Every emotion, anger, heartbreak, disbelief, threatened to consume her, but she forced herself to breathe. This wasn't just about her feelings anymore. She had to be smart. Gathering herself, she turned and walked away, her mind already racing through what had to come next. She couldn't let this slide. Couldn't ignore the truth staring her in the face. But she also couldn't let Dorian see her broken. He had made his choice. And now it was time for her to make hers. As she left the spa lounge, she felt the weight of her next move settling over her. This wasn't just a betrayal. It was the beginning of something much bigger. And no matter what happened next, one thing was certain. Dorian Hale was about to realize that the wife he had so easily discarded was not a woman to be underestimated. Selena walked briskly through the corridors of the spa, her mind spinning with a storm of emotions. The betrayal she had just witnessed felt surreal, like a nightmare she couldn't wake up from. Dorian, her husband, the father of her unborn child, had gifted another woman a ring, not just any woman, but Ivy Moreau, a model known for entanglements with the elite. It wasn't some passing fling. It was deliberate, intimate, calculated. And worst of all, he had sent Selena here, to this exact place, as if he had wanted to get rid of her while he played out his fantasy with someone else. The betrayal stung deeper with every step she took. She clutched her stomach protectively, feeling the small swell of life within her. This wasn't just about her pain anymore. It was about the child she carried, the future she had so carefully envisioned. Everything had been a lie. Selena forced herself to take deep breaths, but the fury within her refused to settle. The image of Dorian leaning toward Ivy, presenting that ring, playing the role of the perfect suitor. It seared into her mind like a permanent scar. Her hands trembled as she reached for her phone. Her first instinct to call someone, to expose him, to lash out. But she stopped herself. No, she wouldn't act recklessly. She wouldn't give him the satisfaction of seeing her crumble. She needed proof. If Dorian had the audacity to carry out this affair so boldly, there had to be more to uncover. His lies couldn't have started today. How long had this been going on? How many times had he looked her in the eyes, kissed her forehead, held her at night, knowing he was betraying her? She turned back toward the spa lounge, careful to keep her movements quiet and controlled. Slipping through a hallway that overlooked the private seating area, she positioned herself behind a set of decorative plants, her phone raised just enough to capture what she needed. Through the screen, she zoomed in, her pulse pounding as she recorded Dorian and Ivy. The way they laughed, the way Ivy touched his arm, the way Dorian leaned in. He looked relaxed, happy, like a man without a wife, without responsibility, like a man living a double life. Selena saved the video, her heart racing. She had what she needed. Now she had to decide what to do next. Leaving the spa, she ignored the greetings from the staff, her mind too clouded to respond. As she stepped into the luxury car that had brought her here, she clenched her fists, trying to steady herself. Dorian had underestimated her. He had sent her here to keep her distracted, to make her feel pampered and cared for while he indulged in his betrayal. He thought she would be too naive, too trusting to ever suspect him. But he had made a grave mistake. Selena wasn't the kind of woman who would sit quietly and cry. She wasn't going to be another wife who was discarded like an old accessory. Dorian had built his empire with precision and strategy, believing he controlled everything, including her. But now, she was the one holding the power. Instead of returning home, she directed the driver elsewhere, to the one person she knew would help her make sense of everything, a man Dorian never expected her to turn to. The pieces were already moving, and soon Dorian Hale would learn that his carefully constructed life was about to come crashing down. Selena's heart pounded as the car wove through the city, the skyline a blur outside the tinted windows. She wasn't going home. There was nothing for her there but empty promises and carefully placed lies. Instead, she was heading to the one person who had warned her about Dorian before, someone she had brushed off in the past, too blinded by love to listen. Her older brother, Killian. Growing up, Killian had always been protective of her, always suspicious of the men who entered her life. When she had announced her engagement to Dorian, Killian had been the only one who didn't celebrate. He had seen through Dorian's polished facade, warning her that men like him, powerful, wealthy, untouchable, never truly belonged to just one woman. But she had dismissed his concerns, believing she was different, that their love was real. Now she realized how wrong she had been. The car pulled up to a modern high-rise, far from the extravagant estates of the social elite Dorian surrounded himself with. Killian had never been impressed by wealth. He had made his own way, never relying on anyone, never trusting easily. Selena knew that showing up here, in the state she was in, would only prove him right. But she had no choice. She stepped out of the car, pressing a hand to her stomach, as if grounding herself for what was to come. The elevator ride felt endless, the weight of the moment pressing down on her. When she reached his door, she hesitated, for only a second before knocking. The door swung open, and there he was. Killian's sharp eyes scanned her immediately, taking in her tense posture, the storm in her expression. Without a word, he stepped aside, letting her in. She barely made it to the couch before the emotions she had been suppressing came rushing forward. Anger, betrayal, devastation. It all surfaced at once. Killian listened as she laid it all out, from the lies to the spa, to the undeniable proof of Dorian's affair. She could see the fury building in his expression, but she wasn't here for sympathy. She needed help. Killian wasn't just her brother. He had connections, people who could uncover secrets hidden beneath even the most carefully constructed facades. If Dorian was bold enough to openly court another woman while his wife was pregnant, there had to be more. She refused to believe that this was his first betrayal. Killian wasted no time. He made a call, his voice low and controlled, setting things in motion. Selena sat in silence, the weight of what was happening settling over her. This wasn't just about exposing an affair anymore. It was about taking back control. While Killian worked, Selena scrolled through her phone, looking at the video she had taken. The sight of Dorian smiling at Ivy, slipping that ring onto her finger, made her stomach twist. She had loved him, given him everything, and he had treated her like she was disposable. But he would soon learn she wasn't a woman who could be tossed aside without consequence. An hour later, Killian's contact delivered the first piece of information. It was worse than she had imagined. Dorian hadn't just been seeing Ivy. There were others. A pattern of discreet encounters, hidden under business trips and late-night meetings. But there was something more, something that made Selena's blood run cold. Financial records showed money being funneled into an untraceable account. Private expenses, luxury gifts, payments disguised under shell companies. It wasn't just infidelity. It was deception on a much larger scale. Dorian Hale had built his empire on secrets, and now Selena held the key to unraveling it all. She looked at Killian, determination hardening her expression. She had been hurt, betrayed. But she wasn't broken. Not yet. Dorian thought he had won. But he had no idea what was coming. Selena sat in silence, staring at the documents in front of her. Each page revealed another layer of deceit, another piece of the life Dorian had been hiding. It wasn't just about his affair with Ivy. It was about control, manipulation, and secrets that ran deeper than she ever imagined. The financial transactions Killian's contact had uncovered painted a chilling picture. Dorian had been siphoning money into hidden accounts for years, using a network of shell companies to mask his activities. Some of the funds were linked to luxury gifts and travel expenses for multiple women, but there was more. Payments to unknown entities, offshore accounts, transactions that had no explanation. She had spent years trusting him, believing in the life they were building together, while he had been carefully constructing an exit strategy behind her back. And now, she was nothing more than a loose end he hadn't expected to catch on, but he had underestimated her. Selena knew she couldn't act out of pure emotion. If she confronted Dorian without a plan, he would twist the truth, make her look unstable, claim she was lashing out because of hormones and stress. He was too powerful, too well connected. If she wanted to take him down, she needed to be smart. Killian already had a strategy forming. He had connections in the media, people who would be very interested in exposing a billionaire's double life. But Selena wasn't ready to go public yet. She needed leverage, something that would force Dorian to face consequences before he could cover his tracks. With a deep breath, she made a decision. She wasn't going to let him silence her. The next morning, she returned home as if nothing had happened. She played the part of the devoted wife, carefully watching Dorian's every move. He kissed her on the cheek, asked about her spa day, completely unaware that she knew everything. Every moment felt like a test of control, but she refused to let him see her fury. Instead, she smiled, acted normal, and waited for the right moment to strike. That moment came sooner than she expected. Dorian had a business event that evening, one Selena had never been invited to before, but this time, she made sure she was on the guest list. Arriving by his side, she played the role of the perfect wife, greeting investors, smiling for photographs, her every move calculated. She knew Dorian was arrogant enough to believe she was still oblivious, that she was nothing more than the trophy he had molded her into. As the night went on, Selena excused herself and slipped away from the main ballroom, heading toward the private offices reserved for executives. Thanks to Killian's contact, she knew exactly where to look. A few clicks on Dorian's personal computer revealed files hidden under encrypted folders, documents detailing transfers, fraudulent contracts, evidence of the financial schemes he had orchestrated. She sent everything to a secure drive, her hands steady, her pulse racing. By the time she returned to the ballroom, Dorian was speaking with Ivy. Their body language was careful, but unmistakable. Ivy glanced around nervously, not expecting to see Selena standing just a few feet away. Selena didn't approach them. Instead, she took out her phone and sent the files to multiple sources: the media, legal authorities, and a few high-profile investors who had a lot to lose if they were caught up in Dorian's corruption. Within minutes, phones began buzzing. The ripple effect was immediate. Conversations shifted. Eyes turned toward Dorian. His phone rang once, then twice. He pulled it out, frowning as he read something on the screen. Then, his expression changed. His face paled, his confident demeanor cracking for the first time. Selena watched as the world around him collapsed. Security approached him. The event organizers whispered among themselves. People who had once fawned over him were now stepping away, distancing themselves from the impending scandal. Dorian finally met Selena's gaze. For the first time, there was fear in his eyes. She simply smiled. By the time the authorities arrived, she was already gone. She didn't need to watch his downfall. She had won.